Hello, greetings everybody. I want to welcome you here to Prog Monster. My name is Murph. I am the host of this show, a show dedicated to progressive rock and other forms of rock music. So we're here today for my favorites, which is every Wednesday, to do something that has kind of developed a little bit since I started it. An initial idea has evolved a little bit more. I decided to do it a little bit differently than I had originally planned. Sorry, I got this bad frog in my throat today. Anyways, we're doing, for favorites, we're doing a 5 rock albums that may surprise you made it to number 1 on the Billboard Top 200. So I'm choosing to do it based on the Billboard Top 200 from North America, because that's pretty much the one that most people refer to, at least here in North America. If people want me to do one from a different country and I'm familiar enough to do it, I will. I was thinking about doing the UK one as well somewhere. Maybe in a few weeks or so, I may do a number 1 album from the British charts. Excuse me. So, anyways, that's my premise. And I tried to choose, I made a list of all the albums that I thought kind of surprised me they were there. So that eliminates bands like the Beatles and Zeppelin and Pink Floyd. And that we all know they had number 1. That wouldn't be much of a surprise. So I eliminate all them, and I tried to pick bands that, well, not necessarily the band, but the album surprised me that it made number 1. So we're gonna start by doing, and we're gonna do these in chronological order. So the one that came out was on the Billboard charts first will be the one we'll do first. So I've got 5 picked. I had about maybe 15 or 16. I narrowed it down to these 5. Actually, I narrowed it down to about 7 or 8. And then I chose from those 7 or 8 for these 5. And the reason I narrowed it down to 8, I wanted to have the physical copy of the album. Some of these I don't have the physical copy of, but I do have the ones for all the ones today. So we're going to start by talking about a little bit about the album, and then I'll give you all these stats on it. So the first album that fits this criteria came out in 1968. So the album itself was number 1 on November the 16th, and then again on the 23rd of 1968. And what really surprised me about this album is that first of all, it was Jimi Hendrix's Electric Ladyland. Not really surprised that Hendrix had a number 1 album. What surprised me is it's this one. I would have thought Are You Experienced and Axis Bold of Love. I think those are better albums myself than this one, but this apparently is the one that made the number 1. Was number 1 for 2 weeks. So Jimi Hendrix, that's the first one. So the second one, actually, this band had 3 number 1s. Their first 3 albums were all number 1. I was surprised that both the second and third album had made it to number 1. I knew that they were both on the charts, and especially, particularly this one had done well, but I just didn't think that it made it all the way to number 1. And this album, of course, came out September. It was number 1 September 16th and October the 7th of 1978. We're talking Boston's Don't Look Back. Now, the Third Stage album also made number 1 as well, but I like this album better than that album, so I chose to put this one in here for today. So this is the second album of the 5 that we picked, or I picked. So the third album, many people may not even know about this band or know anything about them. I was surprised this album made number 1, though. I didn't think it. I knew it was a good album, had some good stuff on it, and there's a song on here that I whistle all the time that everybody always knows right away when they hear me whistling it, when I'm whistling. But it surprised me that this actually made it all the way to number 1. And not only did it make it to number 1, but it was number 1 on February the 6th, the 13th, the 20th, and the 27th of 1982. So the entire month of February, it was the number 1 album. That surprised me a great deal. And we're talking about the J. Giles Band's Freeze Frame album. Yeah, really surprised me. This is a good album, but I didn't think it was quite that good. So the next album up, I'm not surprised this band had number 1 albums. I just don't recall the original vocalist left this band, And I don't remember seeing any of their albums with him in the number one spot, which surprised me because I would have assumed that those albums for sure would have been. But this was the first one with the new vocalist, and I really didn't pay much attention to this album. You know, when you think about it, it should have been up there, but I didn't know if it was good enough to make the number one. But for them it did, and it was number one on April the 26th, and then again on May the 3rd and May the 10th. So for 3 weeks in 1986, and that's 5150 by Van Halen. Now, I'm not a huge fan of this era of Van Halen, but when I was doing this, as I was going through, because I picked this one out already, put on my thing, I noticed that 2 or 3 more or 4 more of their albums after that all made number one with Sammy Hagar there. That really surprised me. I didn't think they were that popular with him, but they had 5 number one albums at least. They weren't up there for long, but you know, and especially in that period of time, where a lot of the charts in the last 2 decades have been pretty much dominated by hip hop, rap, and pop, and vocal music, singing, and all kinds of stuff like that. So rock isn't really, you get the odd rock album in there. It's really kind of weird when you see it in the number one spot amongst all them. So the last album, this one, big jump ahead, all the way up to 2013. Was number one on June the 29th, 2013. A band I absolutely love, Black Sabbath, and their album 13 was number one for that 1 week in 2013. Now, that kind of surprised me, you know, that late in the show. There's a lot of Black Sabbath albums I think should be number one, but this one and Paranoid were the only 2 that made it to number one. A big gap between the years of those 2, over 50, or at least 40 anyways. So those are the 5 albums that I think are surprising that they made it to number one on the Billboard Top 200. So I'll just do them a little backwards this time. So Black Sabbath's 13 from 2013. Van Halen's 5150, which was number one in 1986. The Jay Giles Band Freeze Frame album, which was number one in 1982. Boston's Don't Look Back, which was number one in 1978. And Jimi Hendrix's Electric Ladyland from 1968. So those are the 5. Just basically I just wanted to do something that was a little bit fun, that wasn't too obvious, but at least had some kind of criteria to it. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you want to put down more albums down below that that made the number one on the Billboard Top 200, that probably surprised you or may surprise me, you can do that as well. And don't forget to hit the notification bell, hit the like and subscribe, and we will be back next Wednesday. We'll be doing a 2-part series starting next week. These are both episodes that Ben gave to me some time ago, actually. I'm not sure, maybe a couple months ago he gave me these, and I've been mulling them over in my mind about how I want to approach them. And then once whether I wanted to do them at all, I had to think about it, because there'll probably be a little bit of controversy, especially with the second one. So I wanted to figure out how I wanted to do this. And so we'll be doing those 2. They're going to be, the first one's going to be 10 rock bands I think are probably underrated overall, or haven't been given the credit that they deserve. I mean, there's lots of bands like that. You could dig them up all over the world. There's probably more of those than you can shake a stick at, but I got to pick 10 out. So I'm going to try to pick 10 that I like. Obviously, that makes sense to do it. The second episode, of course, will be the opposite. 10 rock bands that I think are overrated. That one's going to be controversial. There will be people that will chew my arse out for that one. Sorry for the use of the word, but that will probably be the case. But, it's the thing about it is it's subjective, so I will try not to be too harsh on those bands. In a lot of cases, there's a lot of bands I think are overrated that aren't necessarily I don't necessarily dislike. I like them a lot. I just don't think that they're at the status that people give them credit for, and that's just my opinion. But anyways, um, that's what we're going to be doing over the next couple of weeks. We'll do those top two tens, and then we'll probably jump to a 25, and then back to the one other 10 that I have to do, or a 5 and the 10. So we will see. But this is a show every week that's easy to do. There's so many things that you can choose from. Anyways, I hope to see you then. So have yourself a good evening. Take care. Bye.